Okay, let's roll. Welcome to the Hayden Pass Fire press briefing. My name is Cale Casey, Fire Information Officer for the Incident Management Team, Team Blue. J.S. Bronze is the Incident Commander. We're one of the two Type 2 teams in the Rocky Mountain region, and we are assigned to this fire. The fire growth was about 1,000 acres yesterday. Our current fire acreage is 15,754 acres. The vast majority of that fire growth was up in the wilderness area. That was the plume-dominated fire yesterday afternoon seen from the highway. We currently have 645 personnel assigned to the fire. That's up approximately 200 from yesterday's operational period. Of that 654, the breakdown is we have 15 hand crews. That's a mix of hot shots and other Type 2 crews. We have currently the same 7 helicopters assigned as yesterday, 3 Type 1 heavy helicopters, 1 medium, and 3 light helicopters. We do have access to the very large air tanker that arrived yesterday afternoon doing 3 drops. We have 42 engines assigned to the fire, 4 bulldozers, 8 water tenders, and 2 masticators. The relative humidities were up significantly last night for our overnight shift. They reported very little fire growth overnight. We were at about 60% relative humidity versus our daytime humidities, which were in the low teens and early our high single digits. Today, expect higher elevation activity earlier. So again, up in the wilderness area, we're expecting more fire behavior, and you'll see that plume-dominated fire again. I'm going to introduce our Incident Commander, J.S. Bronze. He's going to give you an operational overview of today's plan, and then we'll move on from there. Incident Commander, J.S. Bronze.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. J.S. Bronze is the Incident Commander. Just tell you a little bit about what happened with the fire yesterday and where we think we're going to go with it. As mentioned, we had significant fire growth, about 1,000 acres in the wilderness. No threat to any private property or structures yesterday, so that part was good. Just an idea of what we're going to do tactically with the fire is over around Cuddy RV area, we've been still utilizing helicopters with bucket drops to keep it cool so our firefighters can get some good work in. We do have a hand line in now, a little bit indirect. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to burn off between the fire and the hand line, so we have good solid black and a good containment line. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking on the other side of the creek to do the same thing. So while these guys are burning, the crews over here are prepping the line, and you'll see the same type of activity in the afternoon tomorrow of burning out. So again, once we have a good black line, we know that the fire won't continue along that way. Do have a concern. We have a little bit of fire just in the wilderness. It is extremely steep and not accessible. We're going to be utilizing bucket drops to hopefully keep it in place, and then we're just going to have to monitor by air because we just can't get people in there safely. Continuing on, structure protection. Yesterday I said 4 days and it'll be complete. We're down to 3 days and still on track for that. We also have a main communication tower here for emergency communications as well as cell phone, and we're beginning to prep that today to provide extra protection for that. I figure a day and a half for that to be complete. So we have indirect line. That means the line is not right along the fire, all the way around, and then throughout parts of the fire it's either right on the fire, which we call direct line, or indirect. The good news is we've got connection all the way through this side of the fire now complete. We had to use retardant yesterday in this part of the fire, and that purpose for that again was to keep the fire cool so our firefighters could complete their line. Only other thing is we were hoping to tie in from the Duckett fire and tie into the wilderness, but the progression of the fire got ahead of us, so what we're going to have to do is continue down south on the east side, paralleling the wilderness until we can find a good place to tie it back into the wilderness. Only comment I have with my Incident Commander hat on is we have had a perfect safety record, which is really amazing considering the conditions out there, but I am very, very, very nervous about the traffic on Highway 50. It's if I could see something happening bad, it would be along Highway 50. I would ask the public, please, please go slow. Keep your head on the road. I know there's a fire up there. Please don't stop. Continue on. And I'm concerned about not only the public, but our firefighters. So much so, to eliminate that risk, I have about 290 of the firefighters sleeping out on the line and out of that, 100 of them are literally sleeping on the fire line, only being supported by water and MREs. Again, the main purpose of that is to reduce exposures to the traffic. So we're doing our part. If we could ask the public to do their part and be very careful on Highway 50, we know it's going to be a busy weekend. Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Jim Pitts. He's the United States Forest Service Salida District Ranger.
Thank you. Jim Pitts with the Salida Ranger District, Pike San Isabel National Forest. Everything is really coming together well. We feel very confident in the work that the team is doing to protect the private property and the structures kind of to the east side of the fire. Our primary and #1 objective is still firefighter safety, and as Jay mentioned, some of the things that they are doing to keep firefighters and reduce that, keep them safe and reduce that exposure, including setting up the spike camps. You know, all of our decisions are based off of firefighter safety. So everything that we're doing and what we're going to plan on doing, we take that and we're asking these young people to go into some pretty hazardous conditions. There's a lot of risks that are involved. This is very steep country. Within the wilderness, it is almost vertical in places with a lot of dead standing trees, a lot of deadfall on the ground. Various types of conditions that we all have to take into consideration when we devise a plan to get firefighters up into areas or to not put firefighters into areas. And quite honestly, a lot of that area in the Sangres, we don't want to put firefighters in just because it's too risky. There's no safety zones. If you got to get people out of there in a hurry, there's nowhere for them to go. Fire can still go downhill a lot faster than a person can, and it can run uphill a lot faster than a person can get out of the way. So the fire and where we're engaging it is on the toe of the slope, and this team is doing a great job. The firefighters on the ground are doing a really super job. We are also working with our partners and our cooperators to get the message out, looking ahead of not only forest closures. So we're going to have to expand some of our forest closures, but if there's any other implications or potential evacuations, working with the sheriff and the fire team to identify that and set some trigger points in place. Because we know that this fire is still advancing on us. We know and we're expecting some more fire behavior that is going to make it really hard for us to control. But if we can engage it in the right locations where we can be successful, where we can be safe, then we will all be able to return our firefighters home safely back to their home units and give them some real well-deserved days off. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Fremont County Sheriff Jim Biker could not be here this morning. He and Sergeant Richards are currently assisting the end of the evacuee access to their residences, and I'll give you a brief overview of what I know of that. I spoke with Sheriff Biker this morning. It was a very controlled entry. Residents who were allowed back to their home were allowed in 3 locations. That's the County Road 6, the 40 Road, and the Fish Creek. The other areas that were evacuated a couple days ago were not allowed back in. It was coordinated very closely with the incident management team. These can be very risky operations. Residents had to register the day before and then be vetted this morning at 0800 at the roadblock to get in. Of course, the sheriff's responsibility is the safety of their personal possessions at these houses, so it's not like it was a free-for-all and people could just go up the road and go check on whatever they wanted. It was a very specific entry point for very specific residents who are in that area with property ownership. Their plan was to pull people out at 10 a.m. and go door to door to make sure everybody was back out. He wanted to give the residents peace of mind and also a chance to check on their properties and get a few possessions that they couldn't get while they were being evacuated in a hurry. Any questions for the sheriff's office that I could potentially answer for you?
Do you know when people might be able to actually go back to their houses? Do you have a time frame, like a week or less?
Spoke with operations this morning. Here's the biggest concern. These residences along County Road 6 are all going to be near these burning backfiring operations that we need to complete over the next 5 to 10 days. If we can get them done sooner, that's great. If the weather can help us out, that's great. Next week's going to be hot and dry, so no residents will be allowed back in until these firing operations are totally secure. That means getting a good box around this area. It's a similar story in here. We still have heat on the ground. The infrared flight that we do every evening shows heat all along this fire line. The crews have done really, really well going direct here. This piece is very steep. It's more of a challenging piece to get cooled off. And so we're not going to just let people in because it's kind of cold. It needs to be out, hand touched, what we call mop-up standard cold. So we are asking patients, because that could be anywhere from 7 days to 2 weeks. And next week with the fire activity potentially picking up in the region or a new start in the area, it's just way too soon to say. The evacuees have been briefed on this. We meet with them every day at 4 p.m. at the Howard Fire Department. They are, of course, anxious, but they've also made some midterm plans for where they're going to stay. The animal control people have been helping them with their chickens, donkeys, and horses. I talked to them this morning. There have been 67 animals pulled out of that area over the last 4 days. Those animals are all taken care of. That gives the residents a little more peace of mind, and they were present this morning to further assess if there are any other horses or cattle that needed assistance. That is a higher priority than a lot of people think. There are actually dedicated agencies that make sure that these residents have what they need in terms of animals. That's one of the biggest concerns. Other questions for Sheriff's Office?
I have a question for him. He mentioned that there will be more forest closures, so will that affect people, or are these like out of the way?
One of the closures we had announced is that on the Saguache County side of the fire, this Hayden Pass Road now is completely closed up, so traffic will not be allowed to go past this area. And then Jake can speak the rest of potential closures, but closures typically are a county sheriff, and so now we're going to have to start tying in with, as this fire moves potentially over into this county line, we'll start working with Saguache County. But the main new road closures on the other side. As an announcement for the people in the Salida area, at 5:30 today at the Longfellow Elementary School, the doors will open for a community meeting. The meeting will start at 6 p.m. The community meeting in Westcliff and the other day in Cotopaxi have been extremely well attended. We've seen hundreds of residents there. They're both appreciative and, of course, concerned, and they're asking the right questions. They're getting the right information. The way we format our meetings is we give a good overview, but then we allow citizens to talk to our command staff, our operations section chief, our safety officers, our public information officers one-on-one. So if people still have questions in the area, they can come out tonight to Longfellow Elementary School at 6 p.m. It's a Friday night, but usually fire puts things at a higher priority than just weekend activities. We know there's a lot going on in Salida, so again, we're stressing that people drive carefully to the meeting. Parking is going to be a concern, so take your time parking, get there early, and then we'll leave plenty of time for one-on-one afterwards. Other questions?
Are you feeling pretty confident about all the structures? You don't think you're going to lose any structures in this fire? It sounds like pretty good protection on all of them.
Our incident commander mentioned that we had a plan in place for structure protection. Just in case you're wondering what that looks like, it's sometimes hotshot crews going in and delimbing enormous amounts of trees and working extremely hard structure by structure. It does take a little bit of time, but what we've seen with the very large air tankers and the direct and indirect line we've been putting all on this area that's now complete is that it buys our structure protection team time, and we're also taking out the heat of the fire. So we are feeling much better than we were 4 days ago. Before we had 650 people working 24 hours a day. Remember, we do have a night shift, so all night long those structures are being patrolled. The engine count I gave you, the 40-something engines, their primary job is to patrol structures and make sure, and we haven't had fire really bump into people's yards. This isn't one of those fires where people's grazing fields all around their house have been burned out. Most everybody's property is still well outside the fire perimeter.
So when he said they should have structure complete in 3 days, what does that mean exactly? No structures will be threatened?
What that means is, Jay, you want to answer that?
I think he answered it real well. One thing we're trying to do is we put sprinkler systems along each one of the structures, so if a fire did advance, turn on the pumps and it'll be very secure. So it'll take 3 days to complete all that. As also mentioned, limbing up, taking firewood, moving it away from the side of the house, cleaning the gutter, something that really homeowners should have been doing themselves. Would have made our jobs a lot easier. But all the mitigation that we can do to make a structure defensible is what will be done in the next 3 days, where we'll feel very confident. But primarily the sprinklers is a big part of it. We either put them, we use water sources from streams, or we put up big tanks full of water that we'll have to set up and then fill with water, and then have plenty of gas, so when we turn it on, that they'll be able to do their job.
Is it still just the one structure, the one mountain cabin?
Yes,
Is burned
that's
up?
all.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, for Jay. The towers, the communications towers up there, right now whole sections of downtown are out for internet and cell coverage. And is it connected to the tower up on Mount Baldy?
You got me. I can tell you there's not a fire up there, so I can't answer that.
Any other questions? 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, public meeting tonight, and Jim has one more word.
On the closure question, so what we would do is we, as the Forest Service, put a closure notice on Forest Service lands, and ultimately what that does is impacts anybody that wants to go recreating in the area, like hikers. There's some outfitters that take people up into this country, like on horseback. And so when we put a forest order in place that closes the area, it's just on Forest Service lands, and as Cale mentioned, the sheriff is the one that does like the evacuation notices or those sorts of things out on the private lands and for the rest of the county. So and what I was mentioning is that just the forest closure is going to be expanded. So it will have an impact on folks who are looking to maybe go recreating, as in hiking or fishing in some of this country. So please check those before you come up into this area of the forest.
And how do people check that?
They can go to our website, the Pike San Isabel National Forest website.
So those are the only new closures or roads within the forest, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we'll have a map for you, hopefully pretty soon, if not, later this afternoon.
And then other good sources of information, Facebook pages. Fremont County Sheriff's Office has a great Facebook page. They post updates there. The fire has Hayden Pass Fire on Facebook. We update constantly. NC Web is always where any resident in the United States or in the world can check on any fire in the country and get current updates, maps, infrared. That gets posted throughout the day. We have a Twitter account. We have a phone number hotline for residents. So there's plenty of ways that different people, not even in the region, but out of the region, can check and see what the fire status is. Okay? All right, we'll see you all tomorrow morning.